Testing, testing. This is a audio test.
Excellent. This should work hopefully nice and smooth. I actually just shot you a text message about 30 seconds ago, so if it goes
Yes,
off,
I just saw
you
it.
can disregard.
Do I need to mute when I'm not talking?
No, you're going to be just like you're in the room. So the the microphone will be live, so it's up to you. If you want to mute the mic because there's background noise or anything, that's totally your decision.
Okay, but no, it won't create any
No,
background.
it shouldn't create any feedback. I think we have it worked out pretty smooth.
Great, awesome.
And that's the best view I can give you of the room, but hopefully it's good enough.
Yeah, just as long as Dr. Bowman, doesn't do anything funny with her hair.
You're sharing your screen, correct? You don't need us
Yes.
doing anything from this end.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, excellent.
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, man. Okay, I'd like to call to order the business meeting of the Pelham Board of Education of Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And ask Mr. Rowe for a reiteration of the executive session motions.
Right. We entered executive session for the purpose of discussing individual students as well as the employment record of an individual staff member.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. Welcome, everybody. Apologies for running late tonight. I do want to reassure the community that the board is aware of the events at the high school, and we're monitoring the situation closely. The investigation is ongoing. At this point, I'm confident that all of our safety protocols were followed. Very grateful to the town of Pelham and our neighboring communities for their first responders, and a big thank you to our administrators, Mr. Berkowitz, and school nurses. Dr. Champ will be sharing more information about next steps and supporting the students and community. I do have a happy announcement. Some good news and bad news. The bad news, unfortunately, we found more rock at the Hutchinson school site, specifically where the wonderful playground that Dr. Fitzgerald and the community planned was supposed to go, and that playground is not going to work at that site. So we find ourselves with a surplus playground that we already possess. The district facilities committee met and reviewed. We thought about how best to use that surplus playground. And it will not fit at the other school playground sites, but it will fit at Julianne's playground. So we are very excited to announce that we're going to use the playground at Julianne's in partnership with the Junior League of Pelham, who are planning and beginning the fundraising efforts for other improvements. So that we're very happy to announce that tonight. Moving on, our meeting tonight is going to feature Dr. Champ's budget overview and proposal. And I just wanted to remind the board, at the beginning of the year, we agreed that one of our goals, and I'll read it, was to effectively execute our oversight responsibilities as stewards of the district's finances by developing and consistently communicating our plans for a responsible district budget, current reserve balances, and long-term facilities plan. And credit to Sue for your wordsmithing on that. So tonight we will focus on that goal with Dr. Champ's budget overview. I just wanted to reflect a bit on the work towards our other two goals. We completed the work session on the definition of excellence in Pelham and the vision for Pelham Memorial High School. My takeaway from those work sessions was that excellence means individualized approach for each student focused on continuous progress and improvement. And this type of educational approach depends on teachers having adequate time and resources as well as appropriate class sizes. The district is also continuing to work towards the 3 pillars of the strategic plan, and the social emotional supports and whole child approach, as well as cultural competence and authentic learning, are important elements of excellence in Pelham. And finally, I just wanted to remember and recenter on the elements of governance that we reviewed at the beginning of the year for the Board of Education, which were setting strategic direction, policy approval, stewardship, oversight and accountability, and community leadership. So I think those are important principles to keep in mind as we work on the budget over the next few meetings. Yeah. Okay. Now, moving forward, still having slight technical difficulties. I think I see Amy Rios is here. I'm going to move forward public comment if you'd like. Yeah, why don't you come forward?
Do you want to take a motion
The Junior League would like to thank the school board and district for our longtime partnership and are thrilled for what this means for all the kids, families, and neighbors who will come to spend time there. The park represents the best of Pelham, named after a little girl who spread joy to anyone and everyone in her path and brought about by the community who rallied around her family in their time of need. This is a huge step towards the overall project plan to renovate the park, and we will continue working closely with the architect to incorporate the new equipment into the master plan. Keep an eye on our website for more details and next steps, updated drawings, and fundraising efforts that will get us over the finish line. Thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you very much. And
I just wanted to also, for a moment, and hi, folks, for anyone else there. I'm out of town due to death in the family, so I apologize for the remoteness, but I appreciate the flexibility on the board's part in setting this up, and thank you to Chris and Julian for making this happen tonight. But just I wanted to express to Amy and the Junior League, once again, our incredible appreciation for the thoughtfulness of the Junior League, the vision, and the desire to come back and 20 years later as your signature project to take on the challenge of Julianne's Playground once again. It just is such a great example of the partnership in Pelham between the community organizations and the school district, and how together we all make things better and we all make things happen. So thank you so much for your vision, your persistence, your organization. I'm incredibly impressed already with the folks that we've been working with. And we look forward to working with you on your fundraising efforts and to bringing this vision into a reality over the next couple of years. So thanks again to the Junior League.
thank you. And I believe we were going to send out with our board wrap-up maybe some more information If people want to contribute to the fundraising effort, we can forward that information to them. Thanks. Okay. I would accept a motion to approve the minutes. We can do 3.1 and 3.2 as a consent agenda, the minutes from January 18th and February 1st.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Okay. 4.1 is the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you very much. And I apologize in advance because I'll probably have my own technical issues as well, because I'm switching between lots of different windows, sharing screens, having my normal materials being in the office, but do my best. And it's been a busy time in the district, so a pretty extensive report tonight. And I think after that, we'll certainly take questions on the report, and then after that, go right into the budget overview. So certainly, again, want to echo Dr. O'Mashane's comments about today's safety issue, and just to talk a little bit more about that. I think as folks know, we did have a medical issue. A number of students became ill today at the school, and EMS services had to be called. And once again, I also want to thank our first responders. They just were very on the spot. Right there, great partners, taking care of our kids, working very seamlessly with our on-site staff. Thanks to Mr. Ricky for being on-site staff to support the building administration, and work with them, Ms. Holtz as well, just to make sure as a team that we were all there to get the work done to make sure that our kids got taken care of quickly. So, and I know folks are frustrated that we can't say a whole lot more. I think probably social media has filled in some blanks for folks. But we appreciate people understanding that we want to respect student privacy. I will say there are lots of rumors going around about what did or did not happen. We were very fortunate that all the students who were ill were able, as Mr. Ricky had said to me earlier, all of them were able to get themselves into the ambulances. There were no heart stops and all these things. So there's a lot of exaggeration going on social media. So I do caution folks to just, to not listen to everything that you may be hearing on social media, but to just to know that folks did, as Dr. O'Mashane said, everyone functioned according to protocol. A nurse was involved, administrators were involved, EMS were involved, and thankfully everyone was cared for appropriately. So during the course of that, the building did implement appropriately a series of hold-in-place procedures to enable EMS to do what they needed to do as quickly as possible. So we appreciate everyone's flexibility there. And certainly want to remind everyone that we know that this is hard for our students when they don't know what's going on, and we can't be as forthright as we wish we could be. So students are always reminded them that they can always access the school counselors. We are very fortunate to have a student assistance counselor that works in our schools. Ms. Justine Ladisa works in both the middle school and the high school. She's a great resource for us. And she, as well as Mr. Berkowitz, are going to be sending out a letter really momentarily with a little bit more follow-up information. So tomorrow, Mr. Berkowitz is going to be holding a series of assemblies for our students to help them process some issues around this, remind them of the resources that they have, remind them of lessons that they've heard in health class, and of the resources like Ms. Ladisa, like our social workers or school counselors. They're available to talk with students to process issues should they want to talk further. Student assistance is a program that the district has had for a long time. It's a social worker who works in our schools who's specifically trained in issues related to substance use and abuse, and who serves a tremendous resource for many high schools in Westchester County. So she'll be part of that assembly. Assemblies will be there for students, as I said, to be reminded of important lessons about good choices and about the dangers of some of the many things that are out and around these days that students may choose to become involved with. I also want to let folks know that we're going to be working with Miss Ladisa to put together a parent info session when we come back from the break. We don't have a date for that yet, but we know that with many folks are just very interested in knowing what they can do to help support their children in making good choices, in navigating the challenges that they face as teenagers. So we're looking forward to putting some more information together and putting an event for parents together when we come back from the break, as soon as we can get that coordinated. So watch for that email, high school parents, and watch for more information to come on some upcoming events. To transition onto another topic, just this past week, hopefully everyone received an email about the district's advocacy efforts. Every year we engage in an advocacy campaign to support public education. We work with a committee of the Board of Education to identify issues that are being considered in the state budget that are most relevant for Pelham. We focus our efforts on advocacy efforts there. And so that email went out. We're hoping folks will join and take the time to cut and paste and include those pieces of advocacy that are most important to them and send them to our local and state legislators. So all that information was in there for you to try to make it as easy as possible. Our advocacy efforts this year were focused on mental health funding, safety and security funding, reforms to civil service, and particular tweaks to the foundation aid formula. So with regards to mental health is certainly an area that students across the board in all districts have been struggling more with as a result of the pandemic. So our advocacy is that there either be a per pupil allocation to all districts or an expense based on how much we as a district invest, that we get some back the following year, similar to some of our other expense-based aids. And that's really because we'd rather see either of those two approaches as opposed to a competitive approach. All students in all districts, regardless of a district or community's particular wealth, are struggling mentally with mental health issues. So we would normally be disadvantaged in a competitive process due to our relative community wealth, and that should not stand in the way of us getting funds to help our students. For safety and security, again, as we unfortunately see in the news, and again, we just express our condolences to the folks in Michigan. Our thoughts are very heavy. Our hearts are very heavy, and our thoughts are with them as they had just a recent violent issue at school shooting at Michigan State. So we continue to have safety and security measures on the forefront, whether those are physical improvements to our schools, whether it's training for our staff, whether it's mental health training and supports for our students. And even in our case, the idea of the state raising the cap on pension for retired law enforcement. Right now, they're only able to earn $35,000 in a year to enable them to continue to get their pension earnings. If they earn more than that, then that will suspend their pension, which is not right. And we know we're very blessed to have many retired law enforcement on our current security staff now, which has been a great addition to our local law enforcement in both of our villages. So we're advocating that the state raise that salary cap so that we can continue to bring in folks with that incredible level of expertise and training, and at the same time with that strong commitment to our students. And then finally, foundation aid. We're very fortunate, and we'll hear more about this in the budget, that the state has finally made us whole with the foundation aid that we were due as a district. So that brought us up, added some revenue to our budget. Our concern now is that we continue to advocate for the state to update the regional cost index to right now we are calculated along with many upstate districts when it comes to the factor that's added in the cost of doing business in our region. So we're calculated more like upstate New York when we really should be calculated similar to New York City and Long Island. So we're advocating for updates to the regional cost index, as well as updates to the foundation for formula as a whole, because it has very outdated census data that's used in it. Enrollments have changed, high need population, student populations have changed. We're advocating for that to be updated, not just once, but on a regular basis. And at the same time, a hold harmless provision be added in so that districts, should they have a drop happen, or they have changes that may cause a loss in state aid, a safe harmless provision that not happen, because we need the stability for budgeting going forward. So those are just a little touch on those advocacy efforts. We'd invite folks to join us in that. Moving to another topic, we've mentioned it in prior meetings just recently. The board knows they approved a communications audit contract with National School PR Associates. Alex has the full name. I apologize for not knowing the acronym at this evening, but we are beginning to roll out that audit. So just a couple of highlights that wanted to share in that process. Alex and I met this week for the kickoff meeting with thank you for writing it down for me, National School Public Relations Association. Alex and I met with representatives from from that organization. We're really excited to begin the communications audit process. They have very extensive experience, very detailed plan, and were very helpful in helping us to think through the process. The first steps will be to launch community surveys, which we plan to open February 27th, the Monday that we return from the break. So please watch your emails for that. We're hoping for a good participation rate. It's very important that we get that strong participation rate across the community from all stakeholders. So there will be surveys for parents, staff, and community members who don't have children in the schools. So please watch for that email, and we will use our broadest email listserv for that, so we reach out to the entire community. Excuse me. We're also tentatively scheduling focus groups for mid-March to allow the auditors to dig more deeply, qualitatively, into our stakeholder wants, needs, and perceptions about the district's communications. So we're excited about that. We anticipate a report to be given back to the district in June, and we look forward to sharing that with the board. Another topic certainly of discussion since we last met, and on tonight's agenda, you'll see the recommendation to accept the resignation of our athletic director, Mr. Chris Hodge. He has accepted a position in another district. We'll be moving on to that district very shortly. We're finalizing plans for how that work will be covered between now and the end of the year. We're confident we're going to have a good plan for that. And we know that folks are especially keeping an eye on making sure that we're staffed for the spring sports, that there's equity in field allocation and usage, that everyone has the equipment, the uniforms that they need to make sure that it's a successful season for all of our student athletes. And then as well, in addition to that, Dr. Garcia has already put together a timeline for us internally to work towards milestones for us to hit in anticipating hiring and beginning hiring a new athletic director to begin in the district July 1st. So we will be involving students, parents, coaches, staff, and administrators in that process, probably support staff as well as our faculty in that process, as it is an athletic director, director who oversees athletics as well as health and physical education, curricular responsibilities as well as the athletics program. So more will be coming out about that process once we finalize those details as well, and we will look forward to broad participation. Related on the athletics front, congratulations to Luke Green, who just signed his letter of intent to go to Butler University. The huge kudos there to Luke and his family. Luke is our very first Division I football player ever in the district. So congratulations for Luke, his family, all the hard work that goes into that achievement. We're really excited about his success and look forward to hearing about that success in future years. Just wanted to also note congratulations to Sock and Buskin. I got to pull up an email here real quick about some awards that some folks in the program have received. Yes, so we had congratulations to sophomore Jeremy Tam, who was recognized for his role as Professor Plum in the 2022 production of Clue, our fall production, at Broadway's Regional Awards for Westchester County. He was named Best Supporting Performer in a Play. And also congratulations to graduate Katie Scott, who was recognized as runner-up in the category for Best Supporting Performer in a Play for her role as Mrs. Peacock, also in Clue. So our Sock and buskin continue to hit it out of the park, even though that's mixing in athletics and in theater comment. They can just continue to blow us away with the quality of their productions. We're looking forward to the upcoming spring production as well. Moving on to science research, I feel like we are honoring them every meeting, and that's a great thing because they deserve it at every meeting. So tonight I wanted to call out their achievements. Most recently, the 21st Annual Westchester Rockland Junior Science and Humanities Symposium that was held on January 28th. It is a sub-regional event that leads to the state junior JSHS competition, junior science research in Albany. So of the 300 research papers that were submitted for this particular event, all 200 of Pelham science research seniors were selected to present. So just take that in for a minute. 300 papers from around the region, all 20 of Pelham students who submitted were selected within that 300. So incredible congratulations. Just to have that many in, but then also above and beyond that, we want to recognize the students who ranked as finalists and semifinalists. Following suit, and will be competing in March in Albany. So Bruno Hochberg in medicine in the finalist category, 5 students moving on to the state level. Bruno Hochberg, medicine and health. Ify Jeffries, I apologize if I mispronounced, in neurology. Julia Meyerson, technology and computer science. Emma Von Prague, neurology. Katie Brandler in earth and environmental science. And then semifinalists, moving on as poster presenters, Ava Knickerbocker, Daniel Teleshevsky, Adam Wolf. And then local JSHS presenters, Chris Blanc in computer science, bioinformatics, and Adam Garforth for astronomy. So continuing to just to fire on all cylinders there from our incredible science research program. And my final report item for tonight is just an item that's on the agenda for the board to approve tonight. We talked about this at our last meeting, but we are putting it forward for approval. And that is the single page first draft of the calendar for next school year. So this will set our start and end dates for the school year, as well as the holidays, vacation periods, and the anticipated couple early releases and full day parent-teacher conferences. I will note that Dr. Bowman is pulled together an ad hoc committee to look at parent-teacher conferences based on the feedback that we got this last time around. We wanted to always reflect on that and see if there's ways we could tweak for improvement in the future. So there is a potential that those dates could change, but for now, this is based on where we typically have them for this year. So we would be looking at teachers beginning for 2 days of superintendent's conference days on the Tuesday, Wednesday after Labor Day, so September 5th and 6th. Students' first day would be September 7th, a half day for the elementary, full day for the secondaries, and I anticipate we will likely do some phased-in start days for the middle school and high school on that day to enable some brief orientation periods. Of note, we still have a half day planned for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which is our staging drill. It's one of our required mandated state drills. I did build in here a half day, early release half day, the day before the holiday break. That seemed to be well embraced this year, so I figured it'd be better to plan that instead of calling it as a last minute. That should enable folks to navigate travel as we head into the holidays. Also of note, we do continue to have the February break, the same week as President's Day. Easter is very early this year, as is Good Friday. So spring break is lined up to be the last week in March, but extend through to Easter Monday. That is in alignment with how our local BOCES, Southern Westchester BOCES calendar is set in alignment with this one, and thought it was important to line that up for transportation purposes because we get our transportation through BOCES, but also for our students who attend the BOCES programs. We do have a number of several high school students who attend, and this will keep their educational program lined with the Pelham schools to the greatest degree possible. You will see an unusual long weekend in April. That has to do with Passover. So we have 2 days there in Passover, and Paul, I'm going to mention this now. Pauline, I'm going to ask you to double check when you get a chance to make sure that 23rd is in fact a day off. I think we'd had some debate back and forth in this moment in time. I'm doubting myself, so let's double check that 23rd of April. But then also moving into May, you see in blue 2 contingency days. And as a reminder, what those are is we build 5 snow days into our calendar. If we don't take any snow days, then those 2 contingency days become vacation days for everyone. The district will be closed on those 2 days. If we take 1 snow day, then there will be school on the first day, the 23rd. It'll become a regular instructional day, but we would have the second day, the 24th, as the district closed, no school. If we take 2 snow days, both of those become instructional days. I say all the, and then if we take additional days, we're fine as long as we don't take more than 5. Should we take more than 5, if we had a really bad year, then we would have to make some days up, and the order for that is listed at the bottom. I also wanted to specifically mention that more tonight because I think everyone is aware we have not taken any snow days so far this year. So we may actually be positioned to implement those contingency days for the first time. So we should know certainly by the beginning of April. I think we're pretty much in the clear on weather. So we will know by the beginning of April as to whether those will be actual days where the district is closed or whether school will be in session those days. We may even be able to make a determination by mid-March. So stay tuned. But as of right now, those look some good potential. So let me pause there and open it up for questions. I know I just shared a lot.
Dr. Champ,
Yes.
if a parent or student wants to get involved in giving feedback for the selection of the next athletic director, who do they reach out to?
They can shoot me an email. That's
Okay.
probably the most effective way to do that. As I shared, Dr. Garcia and I've got to work out some details still on the timeline. We will definitely have students involved in the interview process. We often do either focus groups, not just the interview focus groups, but advanced focus groups. So we may also put together some focus groups to hear. And normally when we've done that, it's been some parent sessions, staff sessions. We could even consider student sessions, given how closely this position works with students. So more information will be forthcoming. But if they've got a thought and they just want to shoot it to me in an email, that for a lot of people, that's enough, just to make sure that their voice was heard. And I do read all of those, even if I don't reply right away. Certainly will read all those and take that feedback into account.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, if there's no further questions, then maybe is it okay if Dr. Mashane, we head into the budget presentation at this point?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Again, I appreciate the flexibility with folks adapting for me being at home today. I'm going to do my best to share my screen and then pull up our presentation for tonight. And I will my best to be efficient in discussion of this. Okay, got to pull the presentation back up. Okay, can somebody verbally let me know that you can see that?
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. So first off, really pleased to present this to you tonight. I have to give incredible kudos and thanks to Jim Rickey, Jackie Vigil, our district treasurer, the entire business office for the tremendous amount of work that they do to put this budget together for us. They, in addition to the administrative team, so thanks to our building administrators, our district administrators, our cabinet, for the hours and hours that really go into thoughtfully preparing the requests for the budget, putting it all together, making all the pieces fit, so that we can continue to evolve our budget, evolve our program, focus our resources on that which is most important, and that is our students. So what we're presenting to you tonight is a very high-level overview. We're not going to go into a lot of detail. Over the break, the business office puts together for the board the binders with all of the backup detail that feeds into this budget overview that you're going to see tonight. And then starting after the break, we begin the line-by-line budget overview. So the board is aware of this, but I'll say it for the public as well. Instead of our normal Saturday line by line, we had some conflicts this year. So we're going to be reviewing the line by line budget over the course of 3 evening board meetings. So we have added a budget meeting on March 1st. That's an earlier start, 7 o'clock start. Specifically, the purpose of that meeting is budget overview. So we'll go through the bulk of the instructional budget on that night. Then October 8th is dedicated, I'm sorry, October. March 1st is our budget meeting. March 8th is a staffing review with the board. But then our next 2 board meetings will also be dedicated to continued presentation of the line-by-line budget. So the board and the community have a very transparent view of what's in there. You understand some of what's in there and why. And opportunity for the board then, of course, to ask questions, to share some that strategic vision and direction as we finalize the budget between now and I believe it's April 18th, where the board will be asked to vote on the action, actually adopt the budget. So tonight, as Jim says, it's presenting my budget to the board, and then over the course of the few months between now and April 18th, it becomes the board's budget that's then voted on, adopted by the board, and presented to the voters in May. So again, thanks to everyone who had a hand in putting this together, and let's begin to take a look at what's in it. So as Michael shared, these were our 2 really academic goals for the year, and the fall has been spent talking a lot about these. We've written SMART goals to guide our work in these areas and provided an update to the board on that last month to hear our progress, and there will be an end-of-year report on that work as well. But it's important to have spent the time at the first part of the year to understand where are our goals, our priority, where is our strategic plan leading us, and how do we align the work around that. So now we get to the 3rd goal, which is the one that the board has set around effectively executing oversight as stewards of the district's finances and facilities. So you're going to hear a lot more of that over the next few months. Board meetings and weeks. So with this budget that's being presented to you tonight, the total appropriations for this budget are $91,125,000. That is an expense budget to budget increase of $6.8 million and a year-to-year budget increase of 8.17. And you're going to see a lot of that has to do with increased revenues increased foundation aid that was received this year. So we're going to talk a lot more about what's driving those costs in the budget to budget increase. The projected allowable tax levy increase for a tax compliant budget, given our particular position this year within the tax cap, would be 5.86%. That is not what we're proposing to the board tonight and not what we're recommending that the board propose to the public. You will see as we go through the budget, the proposed tax levy increase with this budget is 2.95%. And the components of that are predominantly made up of operating budget increases. So 2.56% of this relates to the operating budget and a 0.39 relates to capital budget. We, of course, always want to put the caveat in. This is somewhat still subject to changes in state aid runs from New York State that come through the budget development process. We've had 2 initial runs that have demonstrated that the state is proposing to make us whole with regard to the foundation aid, but we will get a final aid run prior to budget adoption as long as the state meets their budget obligations on time. These are the general categories that you will see, especially once we get into the detail of the budget in coming weeks. But these are the areas that we generally look at when looking at the expenditure side of the budget. Most important, I think, at this point for the board to understand are what are the pieces that are driving the budget this year, as far as those things that are driving expenditures, as well as those that are driving revenues. So on the expenditure side, predominantly, about 77% of the budget is driven by salaries and benefits, which are aligned to our collective bargaining contracts. We are a people business, so the bulk of our costs always are and really should be around the human capital, the human resources. So within this budget, the salary and benefits line, you will see increases that are related to contractual and anticipated salary increases for all employees. It's important to note that we currently are in contract with all of our bargaining units. So next year, so these are actually known costs based on the current contracts. In many years, we often have a bargaining unit that's coming up for negotiations. So we often have to make some estimated budget salary estimates within the budget process. But these are known this year because we will not be actually, we will be engaging in negotiations next year, but none of that will impact next year's budget. That will all be related to the following year's budget. So it's a little bit more concrete numbers for us this year. Also, we're continuing to see increases in health insurance costs that are adding to this budget proposal. I think anyone probably knows when they open the bills at home, you're seeing its utility costs increases. That is also impacting us significantly within the district. So even within this budget that we're living now in the 22-23 school year, utility costs are beyond what was anticipated. Transportation, same thing. Those are two big areas that districts across the board are seeing significant increases in, and we are not immune from that as well. So within the budget, you will see some pretty substantial increases in those lines. Also, there are new positions being proposed within this budget to better meet the needs of all learners. With that additional foundation aid, we've finally been made whole. We're able to advance some of the, meet some of those needs better as a result of being fully funded. Within this budget, you're also going to see an appropriation of $2 million from the fund balance for capital projects. You're going to see that both as on the revenue side as well as the expenditure side. But it's important to note that it's in here because this has been really such an important priority of the board to make sure that we are addressing the capital needs of the district, but also doing that in a way that is respectful of our community, and using the funds that are available to us to address those needs responsibly. As we have done for the past at least 5 years, we've maintained about 2% contingency within the budget because we know that there will always be fluctuations over the course of the school year. I've already mentioned foundation aid. The only other piece that I would add to the foundation aid as an increased revenue is we did have 2 teacher retirements, I believe at the high school this year. So we will be replacing those positions as they are in core content areas, but that does provide a little bit of breakage to assist with revenues. The major revenue categories that, again, when we talk about the more detailed version of this, we'll go into more detail, are property taxes. So you've seen that on the initial slide. State and federal aid, that's another major source of revenue for us. We did have an increase in miscellaneous receipts this year due to some interest income. So that we'll be talking about more in the future. And also we're going to be continued our practice of appropriating fund balance to help balance this year's, offset some of this year's budget. So the tax cap, it's been in place, it's permanent now, so we've all been accustomed to this for about 10 years. The tax cap requires that we set the growth we start calculating our growth based on either 2% or the CPI, whichever is lower. This year, because of inflation, the 2% is the lower number. So that's our starting point for calculating the formula. We then use a growth factor that's provided to us by the state, calculate that in. We also calculate in various exclusions, such as debt service, to help us arrive at our allowable tax cap. And again, the allowable initially, without adding in any debt service, was 5.68%. But we are fortunate that we have a debt service reserve a debt service fund that we're able to allocate funds from to help offset that. So that is what is proposed within this budget. That will bring us from a 5.86% allowable levy increase down to a 2.95 to the taxpayers. And again, you see the split between operating and capital. Within the budget that's being proposed, to start with, what's most important to us, supporting our students in their academic progress. Folks on the board will remember last year we added 2 interventionists to the base budget, and then we had created a contingency for a 3rd interventionist that we actually are implementing. We hired that person very recently. Within the budget proposal you're seeing tonight, we are recommending continuing all 3 of those positions within the general fund budget. The budget also contemplates maintaining our current class size guidelines across the board. And we'll talk about that a little bit specific to the high school when we get further down. This budget also recommends adding the equivalent of 2 middle school teaching positions across subjects to meet growing enrollment. I say it that way because when we look at the middle school, we fluctuate from, sometimes we'll have 9 sections at a grade level, sometimes 10, sometimes 11, based on how many students are in a particular cohort. So for example, if there's 230 students in a cohort, we probably would divide that into 10 sections. So there would be 10 English 6, 10 math 6, 10 social studies 6. So we talk about sections that way. So given our current enrollments at the middle school, we need to add some sections across the grade levels. So that will be probably part-time ads in English and math and science and social studies, maybe a little bit of language in there to adapt for the larger enrollment cohorts moving through. We're also proposing in this increases in high school math staffing that will help us to lower class size a little bit and to provide additional student support, thinking specifically of our algebra seminar classes and the return of a transition algebra class to meet student need. We're also recommending hiring of an additional high school social studies teacher to meet enrollment demands. Many of our teachers pick up additional, we call them overages. So by contract, they teach 5 classes. Many of them will pick up a 6th class to help us out. We have lots of teachers doing that in the social studies department, but it becomes unsustainable at a certain point. So what we want to do is add a position to really fully staff or more fully staff that department based on the enrollment needs that we have based on student requests. Also within this year, we did have to add, the board is aware of this, an additional ENL teacher based on increased enrollment that was anticipated in the prior year's budget. Thanks to the contingencies in the budget, we were able to bring that teacher on this year. So we are recommending maintaining that additional ENL teacher position, plus also trying to free our ENL coordinator up so that she can spend more of her time to oversee the program as our enrollments increase. So we need to then backfill some of her to accommodate, to cover some of her current teaching assignments. So it's an additional add there. Lowering class size, we heard a lot about class size at our high school work session. And there are a lot of strategies that one can employ through the master scheduling process to help alleviate some of that and balance out some of those numbers. So we're bringing in a consultant this spring to work with Dr. Tatone as she learns the ropes on master scheduling, and through that looking to find some innovative ways to make sure that we are maximizing the design of the master schedule to try to really balance things out and to try to keep the class sizes where possible below the maximum. Our maximum cap is generally 28, 29 in a rare exception for singletons. We're trying to do what we can to address that concern through the design and balancing process. And then finally, in the academic specific area on this slide, we're looking to add an administrative assistant to support our curriculum directors. This actually serves multi-purposes. Currently, our district registrar also has been the clerical support for our curriculum directors. That's Dr. Callahan and Dr. Thompson. Given the new process we've been using for online registration and the boards in the district's increased focus on looking at residency, the work in those realms have become much more significant on that person. So she does not have the same amount of time to devote to supporting the curriculum directors. Additionally, even if she were to have that same amount of time, having only a half-time curriculum director, as Dr. Bowman has come in and really been able to do a critical assessment of the needs of the department, half-time support for those directors really is not sufficient to meet their needs in a high-achieving district like ours. So we're proposing a full-time administrative assistant to support the curriculum directors, which would then enable them to shift. They actually themselves have been picking up a lot of clerical and really administrative type work that could be handled by an administrative assistant. So that will enable them to offload that work back more appropriately to an administrative assistant. Our staff developers have also been picking up some of those pieces. So again, shift some of that work back to a clerical assistant so that they can really devote their time more fully to the leadership and professional development of academic departments. So I think that by a more indirect path, but that will then allow them to devote more of their time directly to supporting their teachers, professional learning, which then will in turn support our students. Moving to, we tried to allude to some of our specific goals this year. So that was really the core of, our core work of our teaching and learning and supporting those core departments. But we also, as a district, always want to innovate. So also looking at how are we exploring and expanding our work for students. So within this budget, there's funding to support the additional astronomy elective that's being offered at the high school. It also maintains the funds that we committed to with the PEF when they gave us their major grant a few years ago. They seeded the Flex Innovative Furnishings. This maintains that, so we can now expand the furnishings to all first grade classrooms in addition to the kindergarten. There may also be additional funds once that project is done to consider extending implementation of that to the high school, which was mentioned at the vision meeting last time as well. Within this budget, we are maintaining the funding for the coordinator for the DEI coordinator, although we did not find, we were not successful at finding the right candidate. This year, we are still committed to that position. We're looking at ways that we might be able to restructure that, whether it's tying it into another coordinator position, finding someone from, in the same, who would like to, either come out of the classroom, out of the counseling position, part-time for this position, which is how we'd approach it this year, or if need be, potentially looking externally for a part-time position. So that's still in there. We're going to continue to work through that. Also in the budget, we're building in funding for a climate survey. That's something we've been working on throughout this year. Beginning that with staff, our hope long-term will be to expand that to students and to parents. And then finally, as we've mentioned a couple times recently, next year is going to be our year to renew our strategic plan. So there's funding in the budget to support a consultant to help lead us through that work. Moving specifically into the special education realm within the budget, and this is at one of the areas that the board, once we get to line by line, is going to see one of our bigger areas of budget increase is in special education, and that's really twofold. It's partially to meet student need, so specific programs to meet students' specific needs, and we always budget to meet our students' needs as we provide them a free and appropriate education. But also part of that is to support expansion of our co-teach program at the elementary, as well as restoration of a special class. So in the budget, you're going to see a teaching position and a TA position, specifically to expand integrated co-teach down to the kindergarten level. Also bringing back a special education special class to better meet the needs of students. I believe that's the grades 3, 4, 5 population. Because we've seen an increase in meetings, requests for CPSE, so that's our preschool level of special education. So CPSE, regular CSE, and 504 requests and meetings, there's been a significant increase this year. My hope is that this is a post-COVID bump, and that as folks kind of feel that we've moved a little farther away from the pandemic and pieces have been filled in, that we see a decline in these. But in order to meet the immediate need, we're proposing the addition of a part-time chairperson to help with the caseload of those meetings. So that would be grant funded. So that gives us some flexibility to supplement our current operating budget. So that's specific to special education, as I said, to also continuing to meet programs that will provide free and appropriate education. And then another big area for us always is to continue to focus on improvements in facilities, safety, security, and health. So within this budget, you heard me mention earlier a $2 million transfer to capital. This is where that comes up. So we are appropriating from undesignated fund balance $2 million to replace the middle school rooftop AC units. They're HVAC air handlers that do both heating and air conditioning. They are aged out. It's time to address them. We've been maintaining them effectively thanks to our incredible facilities department, but it is time to look at replacement of those. And then also want to advance our efforts to upgrade playgrounds in the district. So You heard Michael announce our exciting news about being able to refresh the playground at Julianne's. That should happen sometime within the next couple of months. We're hoping for this spring. Also, plans are already underway to start to design a new upgraded playground for Siwanoy. And we're hoping to move that through the process, and if everything goes according to plan, budgets pass, looking at installation this summer. Siwanoy is our playground that is in most need, so that's our first project plan. We're also going to be this spring starting the plans to design the new playground for Colonial, and hoping that will be built into this budget. Likely installation would be the following summer, and then plans obviously as well will be coming into place for Prospect, for redesign there. That's probably our elementary school with the best condition of playground, so we'd be looking at likely replacement the next summer out there. That was thanks to the works of our facilities committee too. There's been a lot of discussion around these items, as well as that Hutchinson playground. So we're looking to bring all of our capital projects to closure this spring as well. Fingers crossed for that. Again, just to get back and round out the budget, we're maintaining our nurse coordinator position again through COVID grant funds for another year. We'll reassess whether to continue that project, that position, and reconsider that whether to build it into next year's general general operating budget. We're proposing increasing Alteris, our security consultant, from part-time to full-time. We've had a great response from what Tom Drake, our Alteris consultant, has brought to the district. Lots of wisdom and advice, lots of training, communications resources. And Tom's been a great thought partner with the continuing school security issues that we all continue to see. We think it's important to bring them on in a full-time capacity to continue to keep us at the forefront of safety and security measures, drills, expertise. We think that's really important at this point in time. Also within this, it's a smaller item, but this will be the year that we're budgeting to do our required building conditions survey. That's really critical for the board as they begin to, and the district as we plan, identify long-term facilities needs, begin to plan and prioritize those with an eye towards how are we going to fund those larger capital projects. Also, as an aside, John Condon and his team continue to, over summers, they do a lot of work, and there's ongoing work, regular maintenance projects, HVAC, painting, masonry, LED light replacement, drop ceiling installations, and continuing to implement better control systems around the district for greater efficiency. Coming close to the end here now, in the technology realm, John Sabalos, our Director of Technology, does an incredible job of budgeting and providing for all of our students. We have scheduled within this budget for our K-12 one-to-one Chromebook initiative. Within this, we'll replace all of our 5th grade and 9th grade Chromebooks. So there'll be a refresh. Those students will keep those for 4 years. Also, it's a refresh of all teacher mobile devices district-wide. We've got, I think, about 275 teachers. So if that gives you some sense of scale there. This also would maintain all of the electronic resources and support teaching and learning K-12, as well as support our efforts to continue to implement the K-12 New York State Computer Science Digital Fluency Standards. So we have a deadline of 2024 to have those fully implemented. This will give us the tools to continue that work. And certainly ongoing maintenance and support of our district-wide infrastructure as all of these programs, hardware, software, have training and personnel have grown. So our infrastructure needs have grown as well. So finally, here's some key dates as we round out the budget. As I said, March 1st will be our first line-by-line budget review. And I misspoke earlier, we have that set to start at 6. So that will be an earlier start for everyone, but that's usually appreciated. They'll continue budget line by line on March 21st, April 12th. We'll be asking the board, the required timeline for adoption will be April 18th. So no changes to the budget at that point. Our hope is that any discussion, debate, or changes recommended will come earlier in March as we try to finalize well in advance of that March 18th date. And then May 3rd will be the state mandated public hearing. Yes, it comes after the budget is set, but that's the way the state has set it up for some reason. And then the most important date will be our May 16th budget vote and school board election. With that, I'm going to take it off of sharing and come back so I can see everyone face to face and answer questions. And I know Jim will be a great partner in helping to answer those questions as well.
Well, the Finance Committee met this morning, so we had a chance, like a preview of this. So I'm more interested to see everyone else's questions. But one thing, Jim, if you could help explain, is, while we're minimizing the tax burden, we can't not increase taxes, right? Because we have to think about the long-term budget implications. Can you talk a little bit about that, how we look forward a little bit to
Yes.
see? Yeah.
Sure. And this is the beginning of many conversations, which I think are important for the board and also to share with the community as far as the process. But I see you recall a few meetings ago, we reviewed a long-range plan. And really, our long-range plan kind of looks at where we are and kind of where we look 5 years out. And that's based on different assumptions that we have. And there's different revenue categories that we have. And also, as a school district, there's certain costs that can increase annually just as part of business. Things such as your pension expenses can increase, or your healthcare expenses can increase. Utilities, those types of things that will naturally increase. Our labor contracts have step increases built into them. And in the educational sector and in the public sector, those are very common structures that exist. And as we look at the budget year to year, you kind of look at that natural growth that occurs in the budget, and then you want to make sure you have the ability to address those naturally occurring increases as they relate every year. We look at our recurring revenues being, say, taxes and other revenues, such as your state funding that you would have. We've talked many years since I've been here about our chronic underfunding of state funding, and over the last 3 years, the state has done a terrific job in bringing us up to our formulaic level of where it should be. And I think this last installment will bring us up to that level, which is very encouraging. And I think it's allowed the budget to address many things that people have looked for, and as an educational system, we've looked for over the years, but have just been unable to address. But again, we look at those things. We look at interest income. Again, many types of different revenues that we work through. But again, there's just a lot of different pieces of that budget. A lot about what we look at as far as our expenses. And as we build our budget, we look at it from a ground-up approach every year. What's our staffing? We have a per pupil allocation for our students. Certainly, our principals have the ability to develop their own budgets, and that's something that will be reflected in the budget books. And over those next 3 meetings, really, Dr. Champ and I will start off with a fairly comprehensive PowerPoint presentation detailing much of the budget, and then we'll go through it line by line. The board and the community have an opportunity to ask. The board will have that opportunity to ask those questions on what these lines are for and the appropriateness of them. And really, the budget is your policy document for your year moving forward. It's about what you want to accomplish as a district, as a board, and as a district for the upcoming year. And this is the first step of that process. Again, as Dr. Champ said, it's her budget that's being presented to the board, and then once approved, of course, it's the board's budget to present to the community.
Yeah, and at first I wanted to say thank you so much for putting this together, and Dr. Champ for presenting it.
Oh, thank you. And again,
I meant to say that.
we work with great people, so we're very fortunate to have great people working in the district too, and having the feedback from the Finance Committee is very helpful too. Certainly, we met this morning, and you got a little bit more detail than what's been provided in this overview. But also, we've met prior to this to try to gain some greater insights into the priorities of the board, so that we can hopefully address that in this proposed budget.
Okay.
Yep. Question from me. Less of a question, but more of a request for bit of explanation of how the sausage is made, which is, when you look at the kind of increase in expenses, and you do the math, the sort of arithmetical, a tax cap or increase in the tax levy would be 5.86%, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's being offset by the use of debt service fund, unless I'm mistaken,
Yes.
to sort of soften that pain a little bit to the taxpayer and bring the proposed, in this iteration, increase to 2.95%. Could you just explain a little bit more about the mechanics of that and
Sure.
sort of conceptually how that works?
So if you think about the tax cap, there's really two parts of that tax cap. There's one portion that Dr. Champ talked about, which is the operating budget portion of the tax cap. And the operating budget is the day-to-day expenses related to running the school district. You have your lights, your health benefits, your staff, all of those types of things. And then you have the second part of the tax cap, which is really to address your capital expenses, which in our instance is to pay our debt service. The debt service, most recently, of course, for the bond that was passed, but also for the bond that was passed for this building in the middle school that we're in right now. As the tax cap is structured, the operating budget portion of that tax cap is subject to that 2% growth cap, with certain exceptions and some growth factors. So really, you're kind of capped at that portion, and to have a tax cap acceptable budget, you require a 50% budget vote to be able to pass it. If you choose to exceed that portion of it, you require kind of a 60% plus one, and this budget is not in that regard. That is not part of this request. I want to be very clear about that. The second part of it is the capital portion that I mentioned. The capital portion really just requires 50% plus one. Now, the voters don't vote on each section individually. It's kind of combined into one. But when we presented this information, we wanted to provide you with that opportunity to kind of see how the buildup, how we get to that 2.95%, so that you have the ability to see what's really the makeup of it. And as you look at the debt service fund, last year we were very fortunate as a district to have the debt service fund and use that as a way to lower the tax increase. This year, as the budget is moving forward, as we looked at our forecast, we don't see that money is going to be drawn down, which is fortunate because certainly it's available for the board to be used in the same manner again next year. If next year we run into a process where the forecast runs, the fiscal year runs in a certain way where it's drawn down, then you'd have to address it the following year through a tax increase of, say, 50% plus one to pass that. But it's a kind of a cycle, and it's a process. It's difficult to explain. I apologize too if I'm kind of getting a little too much into how the sausage is made. It's a number of different processes. But we do have a worksheet as part of the process. We can certainly go down and share greater detail on the growth factor and a little bit of idea, provide some additional color on how that debt service fund is helped and can help defray any increase in
Yeah,
that
I think
tax
that
increase.
would be because it's such an important lever that it'd be important
For sure.
to make that sort of transparent and known.
I think the benefit of it is at that point in time, you're not taxing folks for those dollars because they're not needed at that point in time. You're using your debt service fund in its place. And if your experience is in such a way where you don't need it, even better, because then it's available at another time.
This is more of a comment. The majority of is it fair to say, oh yeah, sure, sorry. Is it fair to say the majority of the budget change, it goes towards instruction, right?
Absolutely. I think that's yes. When we look at this, probably about $2.6 million of that increase right off the top is kind of that growing, that recurring expenses that I talked about. You're addressing your step increases, your wage increases from the negotiated settlements, your health insurance, your pension expenses. So I mean that's a pretty sizable portion of it. The year-to-year increase looks even larger, of course, because you have that $2 million related to capital. So obviously, it's not going to be that much higher if you were to not have that. And of course, the rest of it is addressed to the additional personnel that's being proposed to address those other student needs that have been identified for, again, expanding program.
Jim, can you
Jim, I
go
would
into
add-
details a little bit on the capital improvements that we're planning on making, especially the AC units? I know there's been a lot of talk in the community about ACs for different schools.
Yes. Well, the building we're in right now is the middle school. It's served by rooftop units, which provides the heating and the cooling for this particular building, and they're original to when the building was constructed. 5 years ago, when we went through the process of the bond feasibility, it was something that was spoken of quite a bit, and it ended up on the cutting room floor, so to speak. However, the age of the units continue to get older. Sorry about
This
that.
is budget
I'm really
binder.
getting interested and I'm leaning in. And again, the units have not, obviously not getting any younger. We've been maintaining them, and we will continue to maintain them. But even addressing them at this point in time, you're probably looking at, you wouldn't see new units swinging on top of this roof for another year, because at a minimum, what you need to do is you have to engage the services of an architect. You have to have those plans approved by State Education Department. You have to bid that project, and then once you have the project bid, you have to order that equipment, which can take, the lead time on those can be very long. And if they don't show up before the summer, we're constrained to the time in which we can do this, to the summer months, obviously, because we have to keep the school running in session. So that's why the timing is important about this.
Yeah, and when we did the facilities tour,
Yes.
this certainly rose to this project rose to the top, sort of.
Yes,
What we needed to do urgently.
And yes, and actually, one of the things that Dr. Champ mentioned too was the facilities condition study, and that's really a 5-year facilities condition study, but we're on a 9-year cycle right now. The state changed their timing of it. And this was something that was picked up 8 years ago. It would be 9 years when that facility condition study was last commissioned as something that's going to need attention in the future.
And
But
again,
Natalie, to your
oh,
question, this
yeah.
is just for the middle school units? This is
Right.
not, this would not be adding AC to any
Exactly.
building
Correct.
that doesn't currently have it, and would just be replacing the units on the
Right.
top of this school.
But they provide heating and
Yes.
AC, so it's not just an air conditioner upgrade. It's more of, we do need these units in order to have this building operational.
We want them up and running, absolutely.
Yeah, how old are they?
They're original to the building.
Yeah.
So I think we're close to 20 years old.
So we already had kids come through the entire school.
And had children themselves.
Yeah.
And when we go through facilities, as part of the budget process, Mr. Condon will talk extensively about it, I'm sure. But again, it's important, and we do have contractors, and we spend money on it, and units go down, we fix them, and that's what we do. And some of them have kind of been built inside out again. And they also operate on a older coolant, which is becoming a little bit more difficult, a little bit more expensive to get. And we can probably pick up some efficiencies as well, I would think, with newer units.
The interest income that we've been enjoying this year, is that being used as a revenue source for next year, or is that being put into reserve? Can you tell me where that money flows into?
Oh, the interest income for this
That's
year?
right. Yes. correct.
So this year, we did not forecast receiving as much or earning as much interest income as we are now in our forecast. The way that works is when the year is over, we will look at our total revenues against our total expenditures, and our revenues will exceed our expenditures, and that would turn a surplus at year end. And I think, based on our first forecast, we were forecasting a surplus of around $500,000. For district-wide, not just in the not in the interest income, but as you look at the entire operating budget for the fiscal year. And we will have we do have an updated forecast in the budget too, when you have an opportunity to go through the budget as a board, and it'll be in the budget book with the updated forecast numbers.
And that surplus, does that cash then reside in reserves, or what happens to that money?
At the year end in July, we'll put together some recommendations before the board, so that for approval for the board to provide guidance and direction to us, so that when the final external audit is completed, where those dollars can be allocated. So it's the final decisions up to the board. We will certainly make recommendations, and I would envision those recommendations coming forward out of our finance committee.
You had shared, I think at maybe 1 or 2 meetings ago, about some sort of state stress test of kind of district finances.
Yes.
And the percent approval of the budget impacts that. And I was wondering, will this use of reserve funds have any impact on?
I would want to look into that, and I could certainly share that information with you. A planned use of reserves, if this is the budget that were to be finally approved and fully executed, it could present at year end that the year ends in deficit, because if you end up using your fund balance, it could show as a deficit. But it's an explainable deficit, because obviously it's a one-time use being applied to a project such as the rooftop units. When we went to the market for our bonds for the capital project, a couple of years leading up to that, we had some application of this in the same way, some planned uses of the reserves, and you explain it to the rating agencies, and you explain it to them that this was intentional, this was the purpose of it, and this is what we accomplished from use of those dollars. But I can certainly look at the criteria again to provide further detail. And if there's anything really significant, I'll certainly make the board aware of that.
The other thing, I know the state reviews spending kind of by building to make sure that it's equitable based on different categories.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you maybe could include in the budget book for this, if there's like an internal analysis we do just to make sure that we're in compliance with any. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I do, and I'm thinking first about the budget book, because providing it now in the budget book would probably take a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
But what we already do is we do provide pretty good detail as far as where the human capital is allocated by grade and by building. So I think that'll give the board a very clear understanding of where the full-time equivalents are resting. And I think we've done a very good job at allocating that in the staffing section of the budget book. So you will definitely, that's definitely in there. As we look towards our budgeting practices for our principals, as I mentioned before, we have a formula that we use. We have and again, we've got a worksheet, and certainly we can share that with the board as part of the budget overview process. But we have a per pupil amount, and then we have certain multipliers based upon what type of school, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, and then looking at the levels of need addressed to each school, and the levels of need fitting the federal requirement of levels of need, whether there are English as a new language students, students with disabilities, or students of economic need. And then based on those three factors, we then apply a multiplier to that per pupil, but those needs, and then in the school level need, then we apply that factor. So that's how each school's been allocated a budget to develop.
Yeah, I know, Dr. Champ, and you have explained to me before that certainly a lot of thought goes into equitable funding based on student needs, but just to make sure, because I think the commissioner and state ed is paying close attention, and just that our analysis sort of matches.
Absolutely. Every fall, actually, as a district, we have to submit that information, and then if there's any If there's any data that doesn't look as the state, well, if the state has any questions about any of the data, then we have to answer those questions. And that's something that we've addressed for a number of years. But it is after the fact. It's not, it's based on the actual budget that just, or the actual fiscal year that just happened and not the fiscal year in front of us like a budgeting
I
one.
see. Okay, but we are well under the tax cap.
We are under, yeah, you have a fully tax cap compliant budget, which, so in order to, again, assuming that, if that were the budget, I'm not going to assume anything, but if, so for argument's sake, if that were the budget, to pass it, it would be 50% plus one.
Because the tax levy cap could be as high as 5.
Yeah, as Mr. Treef said, if you were to not apply that debt service fund monies to that capital portion of the tax levy, you could still have it increased and pass a budget with the 50% plus one. But that's not the level that's being proposed.
It's
Not
two.
even near.
Yeah, it's much
Yes.
lower,
Yes.
which seems like kind of the headline. Especially when inflation is very high.
Driving to work this morning, I heard groceries 11% increase, right? 11% year over year.
And I mean, I think the you know, from the finance committee, the goal of the budget is, you know, to try and obviously cope with the material increases in cost of running a high-quality school district, but trying not just to maintain, but also to kind of find those places where we can strategically sort of improve what we're delivering to students in a way that doesn't then burden us with kind of costs in perpetuity. So that's the kind of direction that we've been trying to provide. More to come.
I think we've got 3 good meetings scheduled. And again, the format will be very similar. And that folks will be able to go through the budget line by line.
Look forward to that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, so I think, to Jackie's point, that I think it's so good that so much of the, our increases seem to be more instruction student focused. But one area, Dr. Champ, that we had the discussion with the International Baccalaureate Organization earlier this week, you know, one of the things that they encouraged us to think about was sustainability, particularly at the middle school coordinator, AP. So just love to hear how you're thinking about that, or we can talk at another time. But it seemed like a fair point that we didn't necessarily have a singular person focused on the middle years program that wasn't shared with the AP role, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I don't have a fully formed thought on that yet, since we just had that conversation very
Yep.
recently. Sorry. But, you know, so far, many schools have a, you know, a teacher on a partial release as their IB coordinator. You know, we've been fortunate to have Sean Llewellyn, who in the initial implementation years was full-time, shifting into an AP role. It's a role that he knows, you know, he knows well. He'd been an assistant principal before. So I think we've got the benefit of him really knowing both roles very well.
Yep.
So I think for the time being, certainly as long as we have Sean, I feel that that's sustainable for him. But I think what resonated for me out of that conversation was how do we build? And I think, and Michael mentioned it earlier tonight, well, if Mr. Llewellyn and Miss Sabia, you know, disappeared overnight, what would the sustainability be for IB in the middle school? So I think that's a great question. I think that's something that, you know, I know that we've been training teachers. I think we need to, you know, and Dr. Bowman, I know, was already, as she's, you know, going through this first year through, really developing the big picture of what the long-term professional development needs of the district are. So I think assuring that we are consistently training staff, new staff, current staff, you know, deepening their knowledge around the aspects of the IB, I think that's going to continue to make it sustainable for the school. But then I know also you had mentioned at that meeting, so I'll mention it here, I think there probably is a conversation to be had about, do we start a conversation about maybe a, PYP or something? That's hugely preliminary, hugely cart in front of the horse right now. But I think those were great questions for the IB to raise, that as we head into, we think about next year with strategic planning. To me, that is the kind of the perfect opportunity for us to really have some conversation and critically think about what do we want to strategically build in on that, for the future as a district to ensure that sustainability, whether it's just middle school or whether we look to any kind of expansion.
Yep.
Okay. We'll move on to Board of Education Committee reports.
I think we've covered the Finance Committee report from this morning. So yes, we got an early view at what we saw today, but that was all we really covered in today's session.
Had a lot of subcommittee meetings, but nothing to report out quite yet, and we have authentic learning tomorrow, so more to come.
Okay, maybe we'll move on to Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning.
So certainly we have a lot going on in the area of teaching and learning throughout the district. I'll be brief with my update regarding the schedule of the new Regents exams implementation. We will have the Algebra 1 implementation under the new standards in June 2024, followed by, in June 2025, Geometry, Earth Science, and Life Sciences, which is biology. And then finally, in June 2026, it will be Algebra 2, Chemistry, and for us, English Language Arts as well. Since the information has been made public in 2017, we have been working and preparing to make sure that our teachers and students are prepared for this shift. So none of this will come as a surprise to anybody. As has been mentioned, our Tri-States Committee had their final meeting for the revisit, which initially occurred in February of 2020, I believe literally days before the shutdown. On Monday, I met with the Tri-States Consortium Committee alongside Dr. Callahan, Mr. Sabalas, Dr. Fitzgerald, and Mr. Beltakis, as well as Ms. Del Mastro, to meet with the consortium to review the work that was submitted. During the course of that meeting, we got some very actionable feedback regarding the work that has been done. Since their last meeting with us, we have fully implemented Science 21 on the elementary school level. And what was noted throughout the course of the meeting and in the final steps of it, I have some quotes here, and they are, wow, and tremendous work is being done. Clear accolades on the focus that we have as a district on student learning and providing evidence of student learning, having alignment with our inquiry cycle, having that be able to broaden students' experiences so that they are experiencing some cross-cutting opportunities, and really just accolades for also how our district particularly managed to continue outreach with the community throughout the pandemic, citing things such as, events at the film house, and making sure that we were inviting authors in. So we have Ask a Scientist, which was born out of the pandemic times, but is still thriving here and offers opportunities for students across grade levels to really meet with real life scientists who are out there doing science for a living. So that was a phenomenal experience. Today was the culminating event for IB in the middle school years. And again, some of the same feedback, I wrote down some of the same words. Wow, tremendous work. I like to talk about things in terms of glows and grows, and the glows that were given were stupendous. What I want to say here is that one of the pieces of information that was brought forward is that there are schools that implement the IB program, and then there are IB schools. And in the IB schools, you can tell from the culture of the building, from what's on the walls, or what's seeping up out of the floors into the children's vernaculars, into the way that everything is done. And they were clear that what we have here is an IB school. You know, and that was tremendous. The only feedback I questioned was the requirement of a succession plan, because I think that having Ms. Sabia and Mr. Llewellyn at the helm has been tremendous, and I don't want to give them any ideas. You know, the idea that student supports are the focus of professional development, and looking forward to how we can shape our professional development plan to be really in core alignment with what the IB has as the core program, was something that has been started. But again, the pandemic has done wonderful things to make sure that we get to have restarts now that it's hopefully in the rearview mirror. On February 7th, we held our culminating event here in this room with many of our elementary students having a story hour in celebration of Black History Month. And we had, I want to say I had 13 high school and middle school students come to support the youngsters, and upwards of between 30 and 40 between 1.5-year-olds and 10-year-olds here to take part. And it was a wonderful way for us to have the whole community come together to really celebrate celebrate Black history, celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that our kids feel as though they are experiencing those windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors that literacy provides.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay. All right, we'll move on to Assistant Superintendent's update on the whole child.
Good evening. So in the area of special education, our co-teach consultant was again at Hutch to meet with the co-teach teams on February 2nd. This will be her second to last visit of the year. What she typically does is she'll go in, she'll do the observations, and then she meets with the co-teach teams. She focused this time on how to best co-plan and leverage planning resources, and because we are on the verge of our annual review season, she worked with the co-teach teams to look at past IEP goals, how they've been collecting data, and how they use that information to build the IEP goals for the 23-24 school year. Her last visit's going to be on March 2nd. On February 9th, I attended the SEPTA meeting that was held here in the library. SEPTA hosted a speaker from Project Lifesaver, which is a nonprofit organization that's affiliated with the Westchester County Department of Safety. This particular program is focused on families that have a child with a developmental disability that may wander or get lost, and they provide search and rescue services. So it's a great organization that provides a very unique service for this population. In addition, there was a speaker from Project Community who talked about the You and Me program, which is a partnership with law enforcement in both Pelham and Pelham Manor. And this program allows for parents of students with disabilities to register their child with the police registry. And they'll share information with the police department, photos, unique information, so that it will allow the police to have the opportunity, if, again, there's an emergency, police officers will have immediate technological ability to access this information while they're in the field. And it also helps to mitigate any encounters that may be negative if you see someone with a developmental disability that may be kind of looking in a particular window and staring or there for a long time, and you may not know that as a child with a disability. You might say that behavior is odd, but this gives an opportunity for our local law enforcement to understand who some of these students are and what their unique needs may be. In regards to wellness and responsive classroom, our consultant for that program, Mr. Earl Hunter, was doing his visits. He started last week on February 6th and was here this Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. He visits every building, spent a day in each building. He visits classrooms. Dr. Champ and I were planning to meet with him this week. We'll reschedule that meeting to reflect on the past years of training and where we want to move forward with responsive classroom training. What do we need to do to either grow that program or reinforce what is the work that's been done to date? Since the program started in 1920, 4 cohorts have been trained, so that's about 50 teachers and staff that have been trained so far in the use of responsive classroom, which is, I think you heard during the What is Excellence, a lot of the teachers talk about the value of that and that program. In regards to counseling, last week on February 7th, the high school counseling department held their annual grade 10 college night with their guest speaker was Janine Rennie from Fordham University. It was a very well-attended virtual event. About over 100 parents were in attendance and got a lot of good, valuable information on the college process. Also last week, the high school counselors were pushing into the into the math classes again to discuss the upcoming course selection, talking again about opportunities, enrollment, open enrollment, and sort of also that balance that we want students to continue to be cognizant of. This week, the students actually met with their counselors to go over those course selections. Last week on Friday as well, on February 10th, some of the counseling staff visited the BOCES Career Center on the Valhalla campus to explore the BOCES course offerings for some of our students who are interested in looking into career and technical education and some specificity and courses related to that. So there were about 26 of our students that attended that BOCES visit to do that exploration. This Friday, on the 17th, the high school counseling department is again co-hosting with Pelham Civics another career workshop, and this one is focusing on journalism. So the panelists are going to talk about what drew their interest to that field, what it's like to be a journalist in your own backyard. We have Tara Rosenbaum coming. It's going to be moderated by David Joachim, who works for Bloomberg, and he's a senior editor at Bloomberg, and also an adjunct professor at Fordham University. Tomorrow, on the 16th, the middle school counseling staff is going to be, and staff will be hosting a grade 5 information session for middle school rising 6th grade parents at 7 p.m. The information session is to learn about life in the middle school and Pelham Middle School. What are the resources? The middle school counselors will be on hand along with teachers and staff to ask to share information about life as a middle schooler, extracurriculars, courses. So this is just designed for parents. The students will have an opportunity in the spring to visit the school. Another interesting thing I'd like to share and congratulate is our high school counselor, Luis Barcelo, was actually invited to attend by NYU a free paid visit to NYU Abu Dhabi's campus, which is a great opportunity to be invited to that, to see that campus, but also to have the opportunity to meet other international counselors, what it is encompassed to have a student attend an international school, what they're looking for. So we're very excited for him to be able to participate in that. Lastly, I just want to make sure I acknowledge that last week was National School Counselors Week, and I wanted to make sure that I wanted to talk about the great work that our school counselors do with our students, thank them for that work, their support in helping the students sort of find their purpose, their direction, get a sense of confidence, stretch themselves, take risks, and understand that they're unique and special in their choices. Is great work that our counselors do. So I just wanted to thank them for that. Lastly, I just want to share in terms of nursing, and I think an important point to highlight is last Wednesday on the 8th, several of our nurses, some of our administrators And school administrators, central office administrators, we attended a free Narcan training that was offered by Southern Westchester BOCES in conjunction with St. Vincent's Hospital in Harrison that does a lot of outreach work and information regarding substance use and training. So all of us who got trained also get Narcan doses. So that expands what our availability is. And as I shared with the board previously, that just increases between nurses, security staff, administrators. There's about 15 people between the middle school and high school that are trained in that administration and have that Narcan available to them for use. And I just also want to say this is the last time we meet before winter break, so I just want to wish all of the students, the staff, the parents, the board a very peaceful, restful winter break.
Thank you. And you had taken the leadership on getting that Narcan training, right? You had mentioned that a couple weeks ago.
I did, yes. I twisted some arms.
Yeah. Well, definitely appreciated. And I think I've definitely noticed with the nursing, you know, a lot of focus on, you know, training, policies and procedures. It seems like very thorough.
And we have a great nursing staff as well. I mean, they're also on top of all of the trends that are occurring. A lot of times, you know, I meet with them monthly now, so, you know, they're reaching out to me and saying, what about this? How do we think about this? What should we do about this? So they definitely were some of the people that were very forward thinking about our Narcan use and our policies and where is it positioned in our buildings and how should we think about it. So I wouldn't want to take credit for their thought power and their focus on that.
Thank you. And you said there's 15 people trained?
I think so. I mean, you know,
Around that number?
between Jim and I, we're sort of, you know, codifying and creating a spreadsheet of all of the trainings that our staff have. So after I get the last round of names from Joe, we should be able to. But I think we talked about that even before this few that were trained. People have been trained. That amount.
Okay, the executive director's update on human resources and leadership.
Good evening. So quickly, a few items on the agenda tonight. So we want to thank Christian Hodge for his service to the district and wish him the best of luck. He'll be leaving us on March 10th. Just two things to look at this. Obviously, in terms of succession plan, you have short-term and long-term. Long-term has already been established. We did post on Monday the director of PE, health and athletics position, which we will do a comprehensive search and hopefully appoint as of July 1. So that is a long-term. Short-term is you could go two directions. One direction is with an interim. It is short, you know, it's kind of short notice, although he did give us 30 days notice that he was leaving. We also are looking at some internal capacity. So whether it's administrator, teacher, clerical, we hope to have more information on that at the next board meeting, but we're confident that we do have talent internally to help us through the spring time and the sports season. So we'll have more information upcoming on that. We also want to welcome Ms. Kat Fusca, who's going to be joining us, the PPS staff as Secretary of School Administrator, working with Tracy and her team. At Sally Tedesco, although she retired, she's still working with us on a part-time basis, and we know there'll be some transition there as well. So it's not a replacement for Sally, but it's just someone to bring, I think, some fresh ideas, new light to the PPS office. So we're looking forward to having her join us. And that is it for tonight.
So one thing I didn't mention, because it just is late breaking news as of this morning, Dr. Maria Thompson, we were notified today, has been recognized as the recipient of the 2023 NISCUS, which stands for New York State Council for the Social Studies, Outstanding Supervisor Award, and she'll be recognized at their annual conference in Albany in March. And so we're really excited and proud of her. It's very well deserved.
Congratulations and well-deserved. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities.
Well, I talked about the budget, and we've got plenty of time to talk about that over the next few meetings, and certainly the great news about Julianne's Playground, and thanks to the Facilities Committee on working that whole scenario with us, and I think it's going to be a wonderful play set for the children of Pelham for many, many years, and I think that's really terrific. And we're going to make sure that all the kids at all the schools certainly have a great experience, and I know working at Siwanoy as the kickoff, we're gonna keep working through that process. But
And the Hutchinson School is getting their
exactly,
playground.
and Hutchinson, yes, where they'll
I
get.
wasn't sure maybe if I wasn't clear about that, but
Right, I
the
think
playground
I
that's
assume-
going to Julianne's, there's going to be a new
There
playground
will
for
be a
Hutchinson.
playground at Hutchinson School, and Dr. Fitzgerald has already picked one out, and it's being priced, and we really are pushing to have it installed this summer there as well. So it'll
What
be
I wasn't-
wonderful.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
What I wasn't clear on in the discussion is whether or not it's going to go in the same spot. It's just a different type
It
of
will,
structure?
yes.
Okay.
It'll be at the same location. It's just some specifications on the amount of depth that this particular set had to be set at versus the new one that will be purchased will be mounted on a different type of a setup that's more appropriate for the site that we have right now with the rock. So
Makes sense. Okay.
That's the rock, and we could have done it, but it would have been a lot more chipping, and I think we've all had our fair share of chipping, and certainly no more blasting over at that site. Kids over at Hutchinson, by the way, had outdoor recess on the field behind the building this week for the first time, and it was wonderful. So everybody was very excited about that. So it's nice to see the kids running behind the school. So we were really grateful to see that. This evening, there's a public hearing, and there's also action following for a increase to the income limits for the senior exemption. I know 2 meetings ago I mentioned that to the board. This is a tax exemption that's provided to people that are 65 years and over who do not have children in the schools based on income limits. And the last time this income limit was adjusted was back in 2010. So Westchester County recently enacted legislation allowing for the increase of those income limits based on a sliding scale, starting at $50,000 and moving up to, I had it marked here, $58,400. And again, that's how that income exemption or the exemption of property tax works for folks. Again, over years, we've seen cost of living has increased over time, and residents, homeowners that have been able to take advantage of this particular program has decreased every year as well. So this was recently passed by the town of Pelham. I know the village of Pelham had it, and I believe they were entertaining increasing those limits. And I don't know what the status was of the village of Pelham Manor. I think they were the only community at this point that had not enacted it, but I don't know if they were moving forward at this point in time. But certainly, for the school district, this would be the new income limits, and as proposed and allowed by the county legislation. So that's on the agenda for this evening.
Jim, quick
yes.
question on that. Not that I begrudge the seniors this tax relief, but do you have a sort of back of the envelope calculation on roughly what the impact would be on our revenues?
So what happens is it's not an impact on the district's revenues. What happens is that the levy that the district puts out is the same. So if I were to receive a 50% reduction in my school taxes, then that 50% would then be spread out and picked up by the remainder of the taxpayers.
Okay.
So that's how that program would work. Some states have programs where the state will actually fund any forgiven amount, but that stopped many years ago when the states realized how expensive that was costing them. On January 18th, with the Director of Technology and Dr. Champ, we had and Alex Wolf, we had an opportunity to participate in a tabletop exercise regarding to cybersecurity and kind of walk through a scenario if/when something like this were to happen. It was an opportunity to interact with other counterparts in other districts, and there were some professionals brought in from outside agencies to help provide that tabletop exercise. So it was valuable, it was very important, and again, we're always looking at trying to provide those additional training opportunities. And I know John Sabalos works very hard at making sure that the district is well protected. So that was something we partook in. As you look at...
You said that was a tabletop exercise about cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity taking place at BOCES in Harrison.
And that was one of the topics, just talking about advocacy, that came up with legislators in some of our meetings, that's a increasing topic of concern for school districts. So.
Completely. Very serious topic in BOCES, and we all take it very seriously, and certainly it was one of these exercises where it was really encouraged to have cabinet superintendents and cabinet level personnel attend this type of exercise, and Pelham was represented there. We have some transfers on tonight's agendas as you look at it. Some of the larger ones are related to utilities, related to electricity and water. These are being funded through our contingency. And we also have some related to transportation, for athletics transportation. We also have an agreement with BOCES for purchasing to partake in a cooperative bidding process with BOCES. This is really great. We kind of were able to leverage the power of many into one through a purchasing program, and it's a program the district's partaken in for many, many years. We've also sent out our letters to folks regarding out-of-district transportation, and those forms have to be in by April 1st. What we've also done is we've created more information and provided more information on the district webpage related to the level of transportation and the expected level of transportation for out-of-district transportation that we provide. So people can find it on the parent tab of the district. On the district webpage, and all of those folks that are currently receiving that out-of-district transportation, we've already reached out to them as well. And I think that's all that's all I've got right now. And again, special thanks again to the Finance Committee and certainly the folks within the district to help in developing this budget. And we're really on the front end of this process. But we get through it every year. It's like deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra said. So thank you.
Jim, sorry,
Yes.
just a quick question on the budget transfers. There are a couple of very significant ones, like
Yes.
$425,000 from the employee benefits fund.
Yes.
Or, I don't know if that's account, forgive
It
me,
is.
from that account into the operational and maintenance accounts. Should a casual onlooker be concerned that, the employee benefits account is going to suffer unduly, or?
Thank you. I take that for granted, and that's a good question. We do carry a 2% contingency. We carried in a couple of different budget lines, and this is information that we do share with the board at the beginning of the budget cycle. The employee benefits line is one of those areas where we carry the contingency dollars. So we've addressed and will be able to handle all of our employee benefit expenses throughout this year. And the dollars that you're seeing being transferred out are directly related to the additional dollars that were put on that line specifically for contingency.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And the transfer is necessary to cover increased expenses related to inflation
Exactly.
and higher
What we're
utility.
seeing, higher supply bills for, I think what we're all seeing with our kilowatt hours and our therms for our natural gas.
I was about to ask you if we usually see this around this time of year, or this is an anomaly now because of...
This is out of the ordinary to see something for utilities like this. And as we looked at next year's budget, we're looking at about another 7.5% increase over forecast of this year. I was talking to colleagues, some colleagues had it higher than that too. So it's just an area where I think we all know there's a lot of unpredictability in that area right now, but we certainly have all seen it gone up quite a bit, I know, in my personal power bill.
Okay, so our next item is the public hearing So I would accept a motion to recess our public meeting at this time.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. And now I would accept a motion to convene a public hearing to consider the increased maximum income limits under New York State Real Property Tax Law 467 for property owners age 65 years and above.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Any comments, communications and comments from the public on this hearing topic? No. I guess, do any board members have any comments on this topic? Okay. All right, so I'd accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? No. Now, do I need to take a motion to reconvene our public meeting? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, motion to close and reconvene. Okay, we'll say that. All right. Okay, another opportunity for communications and comments from the public? No. So let's do Section 7, Financial Reports and Motions, 7.1 through 7.11 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this is a lot of the items that Jim just discussed. Does anybody have any other comments or questions? We went over the calendar, the budget transfers. We have the resolution regarding the 65 and above tax changes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. I'm going to do 7.12 and 7.13 as a consent agenda. And this includes the motion to accept a donation. So I'll read this and then maybe take the motion. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education does hereby accept the monetary donation of $8,276 for Grant 2305 Middle Level Science and Software Programs, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. Do I have a motion to accept the donation
So
and
moved.
dispose of equipment? Thank you.
So moved again.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? No. Moving on to Section 8, Policy Monitoring and Governance. We have one policy, 7622, Section 504 Grievance Procedure. This is our second reading. And this involves if there's a grievance about a Section 504 plan and sort of aligning the grievance procedure more with some of our other practices.
We would utilize a hearing officer.
To utilize a hearing officer, yeah. Any comments or questions? I think, we discussed this in policy committee, and it seemed like a reasonable thing to do. We could, I believe, waive the second or the third reading at this point.
That's what I was going to ask, if you would entertain a motion to waive
Yeah.
the
So,
third reading.
yeah, motion to waive the third reading?
Yes. So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And do I have a motion to approve policy 7622?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? No. And just to update people, we are in the process of scheduling our next policy meeting. We did discuss more residency policy, and we're going to continue to review that. Okay. Section 9 is superintendent's personnel recommendations. So I'll take 9.1 through 9.4 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second, Ian.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Any highlights?
Just some that I mentioned before. But again, we would just want to again thank Mr. Hodge for his service and wish him the best of luck.
Yeah. Best of luck to Mr. Hodge. And appreciate his introducing the bowling program,
Yes, and yes, and
among other things.
among other things, yes.
It was striking.
Oh,
Ah.
Hanging out with
I
God.
So bummed.
couldn't resist. I got it.
And I see we have all of our sports coaches lined up for the season, so.
Yes,
That's good,
yes.
too.
So yes, we were lucky to have many of the coaches already in place. There may be a couple left, but
Okay.
we'll
It
be.
looked very complete
It looks
list to
complete,
me,
yes,
but-
but we'll be all set for the spring sports.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? No. All right, section 10 is motion to approve Schedule D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? No. Yeah. 11, any new business? No. 12, comments, no more public comments. Okay, 13.
A lot of public comment with no crowd.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn?
Sure. Would you entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes. Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? No. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you all, and thank you especially to Dr. Champ. I know I said to you, you kept a lot of balls up in the air during a difficult time, and we really appreciate your service and dedication.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.